Welcome to Sutter County, a mid-sized, largely rural part of Northern California, and one of only 2 counties in California designated as a news desert, a term used to describe areas, either urban or rural, that have extremely limited access to credible local news. And that can be problematic.
When local news disappears, you see lower levels of voter turnout, especially in local elections. Corruption can increase, taxes can increase.
So for this video, I drove to Sutter County to see what living in California's largest news desert is really like.
People are just kind of pretending that nothing is happening.
How it impacts the people that call the county home.
The government will do whatever they want and we never know.
And what Sutter might reveal about a shady operation taking over local news nationwide. So while Sutter County is now classified as a news desert, it hasn't always been this way. Starting in the latter part of the 1800s, Sutter County, which served as a central population hub for miners during the California Gold Rush, had several local papers. From the 1860s to the early 1900s, publications like the Sutter Banner, Sutter Farmer, and Sutter County Independent had short spurts as local publications, while the Sutter Independent Farmer and Sutter Independent Herald provided local news about the county for the greater part of the 20th century, with the last newspaper, the Sutter Valley Herald, shutting down in 1985.
News deserts, by and large, are still predominantly rural communities.
Zach is the director of the State of Local News Project at Northwestern University.
They tend to be more rural, they tend to be older, they tend to be poorer than the rest of the country.
In fact, news deserts have increased substantially nationwide over just the last couple of years. And the impacts of living in a news desert is something that residents of Sutter County feel every day.
If significant events happen, we just don't know the context, or we just don't know who to ask.
In smaller communities like Sutter, this lack of local news coverage is often most glaring regarding matters related to government initiatives, leaving residents like David confused and disappointed.
A couple years back, there was an old Kmart building and there was some rumors that they were going to be converting it into a homeless shelter. And last I had heard, they were going to be having a town meeting for it. And then without, as far as I'm aware, anyone being told, go to the town meeting, it's not being held, they've decided they're not gonna let the shelter come in. And that was kind of unfortunate because that would be a good thing for our community.
Despite this frustration, many assume that this absence of local news coverage within a news desert can be made up in a couple of different ways, starting with local news outlets from neighboring counties. But honestly, it's not that simple.
Occasionally there will be counties that might get some coverage from an adjacent county. They might still receive some regional coverage, but there's not a locally based source of news, and that's an important distinction.
Interestingly, Sutter County is one of those unique counties that does get some local news coverage from adjacent counties, like Yuba County and Sacramento County. But unfortunately, for residents in Sutter County, this adjacent coverage doesn't provide the level of in-depth reporting that they want from their local news coverage.
It's very limited of what kind of content that they provide us. Recently, I've noticed that there were a lot of sheriffs or officers that may have passed away. I was really searching information about what actually happened, and it almost always kind of led to Sacramento news, which felt a little bit odd because they don't necessarily cover this area.
So while this regional news coverage can help residents stay on top of headlines, it's unable to provide specific details that a locally based news outlet could provide, which leads residents in news deserts, including Sutter County, to search for other options, notably social media, which many just assume can effectively make up this information gap. And it is true that for many Americans, social media platforms play a huge part in how they go about getting local news. But as we've seen throughout local communities across the country, this can quickly lead to a slippery slope with dangerous consequences, especially in the age of AI.
Do you trust the local news that you are getting on social media?
Not entirely. Places like Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, no, not at all. You never know where anyone's coming from, where their ideas are coming from, what their articles are coming from.
That leads us to a dilemma. If people living in news deserts can't get trustworthy and in-depth reporting from either local news stations or social media, where do they go? The answer used to be public broadcasting until, well,
President Trump signed an executive order cutting federal money to PBS and NPR.
The Corporation for Public Broadcasting announced its closure this week after federal budget cuts pushed by the Trump administration.
And these huge cuts to public broadcasting are already starting to take a major toll on local communities across the country, especially those designated as news deserts. In fact, Northwestern's 2025 local news report estimated that public radio stations reached approximately 82% of news deserts nationwide.
The federal cuts to public broadcasting were particularly concerning because they are going to have the greatest impact on smaller stations in more rural or poorer places. And these are the exact places that have the most to lose if they lose that public broadcasting station.
Luckily, despite devastating federal cuts to public broadcasting nationwide, Sutter County's access to public broadcasting isn't going away anytime soon. In January of this year, Sutter County's public broadcasting station, Sacramento-based KVIE, assured audiences that they will keep local shows on the air, thanks in part to private donations in recent years, while acknowledging that federal cuts are still making an impact on the station.
Kind of seems like it's not on the quality that it used to be before. And I don't know if that's just because they're at budget cuts, they're starting to, go down on production. I'm not sure. But it's definitely starting to be seen.
So while public broadcasting for Sutter County is still above water, its Sacramento-based location and shaky financial future means residents of Sutter County still need other options. That brings us to new, locally based media startups. In an undeniably sober age for local news, digitally native, locally based news startups have successfully popped up in many parts of the country, something Lev wishes existed in Sutter County.
We just don't have anyone to refer to. Nothing truly exists like this.
With a population hovering around 100,000, there is undeniably an opportunity to create a new, digitally native news startup to serve Sutter County. But there are also a lot of dangers and challenges in doing so. As part of my research for this story, I wanted to see if there was in fact any local news startups starting to emerge in Sutter County. In doing this, I came across this news site, the Yuba Sutter Times. For my first initial look through, it seemed pretty legit. Plenty of local news articles covering Sutter County. But somewhat suspiciously, there wasn't much info about who the actual authors of this site were. So I filled out the contact form, but got no response. And then I found out. The Yuba Sutter Times wasn't some locally funded news startup. It was part of a nationwide conglomerate of AI-generated and partisan-focused local newspapers run by Metric Media, a conservative media company. It's what media experts define as pink slime news. And this is happening in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Boise, Idaho, Burlington, Vermont, and as I know now, it's happening in Sutter County as well. Astoundingly, since 2024, pink slime news sites outnumber the amount of legitimate local newspapers nationwide.
People, I've noticed, kind of believe the first thing they see, especially if it's something that already kind of goes with their sensibilities.
For a county like Sutter, a place classified as a news desert and one considered to be a Republican stronghold, it should be no surprise why Metric Media targeted the county. And I want to be clear, this would be just as much of a problem if Metric Media was a Democrat-leaning media operation. The crux of the issue here is that instead of filling a local news shortage in places like Sutter with reliable, independent news outlets, counties like Sutter are being exploited for partisan interests, turning whatever is left of local news into something much more reminiscent of social media algorithms and online forums that residents have become fed up with.
Initially, when I moved here, I thought maybe Nextdoor would be a great source for me for local media, but I also felt very limited. Felt like it was very skewed by personal views versus actual things that were happening in the community.
So is there any genuine local news solution for a place like Sutter? While local news startups are continuing to emerge, for the most part, they aren't originating in rural places like Sutter, but rather in urban areas. And that kind of makes sense, given some of the financial challenges facing rural communities.
There's limited broadband access. There's more limited availability of capital, both market capital as well as philanthropic capital to start either a for-profit or nonprofit newsroom.
But whatever the economic realities of news businesses in places like Sutter County really are, it doesn't change the fact that the people of Sutter County deserve greater transparency about what is going on in their community. Around the country and across the political spectrum, we are hearing a resounding call to give power back to working people. From bringing back blue-collar jobs that got shipped overseas to ending billionaire corporate lobbying in our government. But this is only possible if working communities have the power to make their own decisions. And the only way to do that is by giving them access to credible, transparent, and nonpartisan local news. And since any community is a good place to start, why not Sutter County?